In the early morning, the sky was filled with morning glow, and a flock of wild geese was flying over a bay. The rays of light illuminate the sea in various colors and is extremely beautiful. Ahead was Stockholm. Nils excitedly begged Oscar to fly lower. He wanted to see this legendary and extremely beautiful city. The wild geese flew lower and lower over the sea. Suddenly, someone among the geese shouted, "There is something on the sea. I don't know what it is." Oscar had just seen clearly that it was a fishing boat on the sea. At this time, there was a sharp sound. The sound of gunshots came. "No, it's a fishing boat. Everyone hurry up and fly higher," Oscar ordered. But Martin and Janice couldn't fly to high altitude quickly, and bursts of loud gunfire came, making them even more panicked. Oscar flew to Morten and Denki and taught them how to flap their wings to rush up. Martin followed Oscar's example and tilted his body upright just as he was about to fly upwards. Nils lost his grip and slid onto Martin's tail with a scream, grabbing a few feathers in his hand. However, Nils couldn't hold on and fell into the seawater, making a splash. At this time, the fisherman on the fishing boat stopped shooting, took out a small fishing net and fished it out where the water splashed, and Nils lay in the net. When the fisherman saw the unconscious little man in front of him, he was shocked. "What is this? It looks like a human, but it is too small. It cannot be a human. It must be a monster," the fisherman said to himself. He was about to throw him into the sea when Nils woke up. Nils rubbed his eyes, sneezed, looked at the man in front of him and said, "Thank you for saving me." The man felt even more strange. This monster could actually speak human language. Why not take it to the market and sell it? So Nils was brought home by the fisherman. The wild geese heard the gunshots stop and landed on the sea. They saw Nils being taken away by the fisherman and followed him all the way to where he lived. They hovered over the house trying to rescue Nils. Nils was brought into the house, and the fisherman's wife brought hot pumpkin porridge, which Nils drank with satisfaction. The hostess curiously asked the little monster, "Little monster, show us a magic trick." Nils replied, "Thank you for the soup, but I am not a monster, and I don't know any magic." The woman said disappointedly, "I thought you knew magic and could conjure some gold coins for us." Then she said to her husband, "There's no use keeping him. Why not go to the market and sell him?" The fisherman found a bamboo basket, put Nils in it, and rode toward the Stockholm market. A flock of wild geese has been following them in the sky. On the way, the fisherman saw an old man playing the violin, so he walked up and said, "Sir, I have a treasure here. Do you want to see it?" Then the fisherman opened the bamboo basket. When the violinist saw Nils, he was surprised and said, "What is this?" The fisherman said, "This is a little monster that can speak human language. If you keep him, he can perform with you everywhere." The violinist thought for a while and said, "Well, maybe he can make me a lot of money." So he bought Nils. The violinist took Nils home and looked at him carefully on the table. Nils felt very frustrated that he was being sold like a piece of fruit in the market. At this time, the violinist began to practice playing, and Nils fell asleep while listening. Early the next morning, the violinist took Nils out. They came to a lively square. The musician played the violin and asked Nils to start performing along with the music. Nils helplessly began to dance and sing at the top of his voice. Slowly, the crowd began to gather here, and everyone was attracted by this little monster performing songs and dances. They came up to Nils, looked at him carefully, and talked. Nils saw the children his age following their parents, happily holding their parents' hands, and suddenly stopped singing. Tears welled up in his eyes as the scene before him reminded him of his family and close friends. Neil felt so sad that he lay on the ground and burst into tears. One boy asked softly, "Where are you from, and why are you crying?" Neil told everyone, "I was a naughty child. One day, the elf in the forest released the magic and became what I am now. Then, I traveled with a group of wild geese. Yesterday, I accidentally fell into the sea, was fished out by a fisherman. He sold me to a violinist. How I miss my friends." When everyone heard what happened to Neil, they all sympathized with him and no longer regarded him as a monster. At this time, someone pointed at the sky and shouted, "Look, a bunch of wild geese." Neil looked up and saw that it was Martin and the others flying above. "They must be looking for me everywhere," Neil thought. At this time, the violinist said to Neil, "Go and find your friends. I can't force others to do things they don't want to do." Neil bowed gratefully to the violinist and then looked at the wild geese. They ran in the direction they were flying.